Hey, what's up? It's me, Seth with SethPerler.com. Welcome back. I'm an executive function coach based out of Boulder, Colorado. I just redid The Office. Hope you like it. Pretty excited about it. We got all the things going on, a new vibe. Anyhow, let me get to the point. Today, parents, what I'm going to talk to you about a little bit is how I help students prioritize homework. So here's the deal. Your kid comes home from school, they've got a bunch of homework. What does a kid who struggles with executive function usually do? What they do typically is they look in their backpack or their folders or whatever, and they chaotically grab something that needs to be done. They're often not using a planner effectively. They're often not very aware of exactly what needs to happen. However, they have a sense that something needs to be done. So if they're somewhat responsible, they're looking for that thing or the most important things to be done. They pull them out of the backpack, they do them. They'll reflect a little bit maybe, and if they use a planner, they hopefully are looking at the planner and saying, okay, these are the things that I have to do. But generally speaking, a kid who struggles with executive function more or less chaotically grabs something to do something because they know they have stuff to do. So, when I'm working with these students, what I help them do is I help them to do a daily plan. I'm not going to go in deep about the daily plan right now, but I help them figure out, what do I have to do tonight? So they list out, and I always ask what's your number one priority. They put that first, and then what other things. So maybe their number one priority is finish a math worksheet, and then they have to write a draft, and then they have to read a chapter of something. They have to study Spanish, whatever. They write out the things that they need to do that night. And then we have a back burner and so on and so forth. What I'm going to talk about specifically right now is this. How does your child prioritize what they do first? Why? Because if they don't choose the order or prioritize the order in which they're going to do things, again, they are chaotically doing things. That can be okay. However, one of the problems with chaotically doing whatever is that there's a lot of residual loss of sort of focus time. So, for example, let's say they had an hour and a half worth of homework in a given night, but because it's so chaotic, they kind of start something, kind of finish something, kind of have to do something, kind of grab the next thing, kind of work on it, kind of take a break that's kind of really long and kind of takes them down a rabbit hole where they get really defocused, out of a study mode. It's hard to get back into that kind of, etc. So basically, they take this 90 minutes of homework and it gets strung out, the quality goes down, the time increases that's required to do it, and ultimately the amount of things that they get done is less, etc. So what I'm talking about, again, is how do we figure out exactly what they have to do? So I have them list what they have to do, and how do we prioritize it? How do we prioritize it? That was a lot of setup to get to this point. There are 5 main ways that after years of doing this, there are 5 main ways that I have noticed that people prioritize stuff. So I find myself asking kids all the time the same question that I'm going to pose to you, which is going to help you understand these 5 ways. And here's what I will ask my students. Cool, now we know what you have to do tonight. What do you want to do first? I don't want you chaotically just doing something whenever. Let's get a structure to this. So what do you need to do first? Do you want to do the number one priority first, the easiest thing first, the hardest thing first, the longest thing first, or the shortest thing first? Now, maybe parents, you have another idea of a way people prioritize things, but those are the general ones that I find over and over. So you can take this information and be like, oh yeah, my kid usually does the most important first, or the easiest first, or the quickest first, or they just randomly do something and they have no method to the madness. When I pose that question to the kids, so they've written out the 4 or 5 things they need to do tonight, and I say, cool, now we know what you have to do. What order do you want to do them in? What do you want to do first? Do you want to do the easiest first, the hardest first, the shortest first, the longest first, or the highest priority first? And what you ultimately find is that unless there's a super high priority because like there is a big project due tomorrow, which ultimately trumps everything. Like when your kid's anxious and they've waited till the last minute on something and it's really down to the wire and they've got to do it, then everything else goes out the window. Obviously, that number one priority gets done first. Aside from those types of days, we want to ask that question: what do you want to do? Easiest, hardest, longest, shortest, or highest priority? And people have different styles. So I personally am somebody who likes to do the quickest things first. The reason I like to do the quickest things first is because I get multiple things crossed off my to-do list quickly and easily. So I get multiple things to cross off pretty quickly. And also because it helps me get the ball rolling and get into a work mode and a focus mode. So when a kid says, yeah, I want to do the easiest or the hardest or whatever, I always follow up with, oh, cool. Why? Because I want to know what they're thinking. Oh, well, I like to do the hardest because blah, blah, blah. Or I like to do the number one priority because blah, blah, blah. Now, this may change. Next week, you ask them on a Wednesday, what do you want to do first? Easiest, hardest, shortest, longest, or number one priority first? And it may change, and that's okay. But I'm always curious. Why? And then I'm like, oh, that's a really good reason. So I'm always supporting them and giving them feedback. But I want that metacognition going. I want them having to articulate why they're choosing to do things the way they do. That's very important because I want them mindful and conscious and self-aware and knowing why they're making the choices they are making. Because the more they have knowledge of why they're making the choices they are making, the better choices they're going to make in all areas of life. But basically, I'm asking those 5 questions, and then we're putting them in order. They're going to do this first, this second, this third, this fourth, this fifth, whatever their homework is for the night. Now, your child probably is not going to get everything done on their list each night. That's very common with kids who struggle with executive function. So it might be a win for you if they got 3 out of 5 things, or 3.5 out of 5 things, or whatever. So you always have to look at what's a win in this situation. You know, my kid needs self-care time. They need play time. They need relaxing time. Like, you know, what can we let go? What can we absolutely not let go? Because sometimes your kid might want to do the things, they might miss their number one priority. And one of the most important things, no matter what order my kids go in at my office here, I need to know that at least their number one priority thing is going to get done. Why? Because the number one priority thing is the thing that I say, if you got nothing else done today, what would be your number one priority? What would you get done and be happy about it? So at the very least, the number one priority thing has to be done, but it doesn't necessarily have to be done first. But I want them thinking in these terms, people. This is about thinking. This is about how our brain plans things and the thinking that's associated with planning. You know, this is a very complex skill. So anyhow, I just wanted to point that out to you, and it's a great question you can ask your child. Hey, what do you got to do tonight? Okay, let's list all the things. Now, what order do you want to do them in? And what do you want to do first? The easiest, hardest, shortest, longest, or highest priority thing first. And then they pick what order. And in my office, what I do is I have them write what order. Maybe it's 5, 3, 2, 1, you know, whatever order they want to do those things. I have them pick that at the beginning when we're planning the night. Why? The other benefit of picking the order they want to do things is it takes the lingering residual breaks that are kind of chaotic and that are really a time waster and an energy waster for them, and they make the decision at the beginning of the night. So they take out their plan. Let's say they use a note card or whatever. They write their plan of the things they're going to do. They figure out what order they're going to do them in. And now, once they finish one thing, all they have to do is look at their to-do list and say, okay, here's my next thing. Here's what I chose as number 2. The thinking and decision making has already been done. I don't want them making that decision after they finish their first task. I want them having made that decision when they made their plan for the night. Now, last thing I'm going to say to you parents, this is not an overnight matter. I do not teach these kids to do this and do this 2 or 3 times with them and they've got it. Okay, this takes persistence, it takes time, it takes patience. It takes a lot of exhaustive, in-depth discussion about things. And a lot of times as the parent, you're like, look, let's move it. You need to get this done. Go. This has to get done. You need to go to bed. I see what's going on here. I see that you need to be in bed in an hour. It's going to take you 20 minutes to get ready for bed. It means you only have 40 minutes to do 2 hours worth of stuff. Come on, let's get it. So it's very hard, I think, sometimes as a parent to watch this because stuff's got to get done. And you're like, I want you to be done. I want you to have free time. I don't want you to take all night to do this stuff. But sometimes you need to have these discussions over and over, patiently, persistently, continuing to deepen the discussion and help them with gradual release of responsibility where they more and more take ownership of this process as they develop the extraordinarily complex skills of planning. So to recap, this was about 5 questions that I find myself asking kids over and over and over as we are planning their evening. Those 5 questions I ask are, after we finish their general plan of what needs to get done, what order do you want to do these things in? And do you want your first thing to be do you want to do the easiest things first, the hardest things first, the shortest things first, the longest things first, or the highest priority things first? Why is that your choice? That's really interesting. Tell me more. Cool. Okay, let's make our order. Good. Now we can get started. And now they can get started doing their work. And when they're done with one task, they can move easily into another one that they have intentionally chosen the order of, so that they can really get down to business and get back to free time, fun time, and stuff like that. Anyhow, again, my name is Seth with SethPerler.com. I'm an executive function coach out of Boulder, Colorado. If you haven't signed up on my website for my weekly blog, I send you out an update every week and help you figure out how to navigate this thing called education. Have a great day. I will see you soon.